Okay, so now we're going to start to assemble these parts together. And the first thing we're going to do is assemble the top block to the bottom block. So remember, the bottom block is grounded, so that means we need to move this top block over to the bottom block. Um, and could we just do this? Yeah, but if you notice, if I'm moving it around, it's we don't know if it's exactly aligned, if it's flush, and so this this can become a problem later on. So there's got to be a way that we can get this exactly, you know, in the position where it needs to be at. So that's where this feature, the constraint feature, comes into place. Okay? So let's click constraint. So under assembly type, notice that we have four different assembly types that we're going to use, that we have to choose from: mate, angle, tangent, insert. Excuse me, there's five different types. And then symmetry, but primarily we work with these first four. So this can be a little abstract if this is your first time dealing with assemblies, which is the very reason why I chose uh, these uh, these blocky shapes here, because they're easier. This concept of assembling uh, parts together is easier to deal with when the shapes are very blocky or the surfaces are flat. When they become round, we deal with more advanced parts, then it may be a little challenging to deal with. But let's go ahead and just um, play with this constraint feature a little bit. So the first thing that we need to select is mate, okay, because we're going to be joining two surfaces together, okay, two flat surfaces at that. And so the mate feature, you notice that once you choose the type of assembly, then you have a solution. Okay? So I can choose to have the surfaces um, pointing in opposite directions. So for example, if I choose this surface here, I'll left click, and so now I've chosen the first surface. So it's prompting me to choose the second surface. What am I going to join this to? Am I going to join it here? Am I going to join it here? Am I going to join it here to a flat surface? And I can choose a surface, or excuse me, a face of the part, or I can choose the edge of the part, but we're going to choose a face. So watch what happens when I choose this face. Okay, so if you notice up here, you see how these two icons here, they're facing in opposite directions. That's exactly what's happening down here. But let's look at our block assembly. We want them to be facing in the same direction. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cancel this, go back into constraint, make sure uh, the mate is selected here, and then this time I'm going to go to flush. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to spin this up to where I'm going to choose this face of the top block here, this piece here. Right. Then I'm going to choose this surface here because I want those two to be, excuse me, I want those two to be joined together. Matter of fact, let me go back and choose mate. I'm sorry, because they're going to be pointing in opposite directions. Okay, so now you see that they've been mated together in opposite directions, and now this is exactly on top of each other. And now once you perform a constraint, you have to click apply. Okay? And then I'll go ahead and get out of this feature. And one thing you notice that I can still move this part here, okay? But if you look at let me go back to oops. If you look at it like this, all right, I can, if I'm dragging, when I go to drag my part, I can move it left to right, but I cannot move it up and down, okay? Because these two surfaces here, all right, the top surface of my bottom block, all right, and then the bottom surface of this top block, they're stuck together, okay? I can move this left and right as far as I want to, all right? All right, I can move this left and right as far as I want to, but I cannot move up or down because they're mated together, okay? So the question becomes is how do I get these to where these surfaces, this edge is aligned with this edge, right? And again, I go back into constraint and make sure that I choose mate. And this time I'm going to choose flush, okay? Okay, so what I'm going to do is make sure that this face here, click this, is flush with this face here. Okay? So now these two are aligned. I click apply and then get out of this feature. Okay, so now let's check what movements that I have here. So you see that the top part of this gray block or the bottom block is mated with the bottom part of the top block. So I can't move this part up or down off of it. And then now these two surfaces are mated together, so I can't move left or right anymore, but I can move forward and back. Okay? Okay? And so the next thing I need to do, what I can do is to mate this face with this face. And once I do that, I shouldn't have any more movement. So I go back into constraint, make sure I have mate here, and I want to make them flush. Okay? So I'm going to choose this face here. Okay, so now they're flush. And I click apply and get out of this feature. Okay, so now there's no more movement. Okay, because I've restricted this block. Well, first of all, the gray, this bottom block is grounded, so this is not going to move. But the top block is constrained to the bottom block in a way where there's no more degrees of movement. They're flush together, and these faces, they're mated together, excuse me, and these faces are flush. These faces are flush, so there's no more movement. And of course, you could have done this a couple other different ways, but um, this is the way, as I'm working through this, this is the way that I saw it. So in the next video, what we'll do is we'll go back into constraint, but we have to use a different assembly constraint in order to get this post inside of this top and bottom block.